You're listening to Overhead Story Channel. Enjoy.
I wasn't supposed to be home that day. The annual Pacific Northwest Audit Conference had been on my calendar for months, 3 days of seminars, networking, and overpriced hotel food in downtown Portland. I'd packed my suit, ironed my shirts, even left Savannah a handwritten note on the fridge, something I hadn't done in years. Back Sunday. Don't miss me too much. The cancellation hit around noon. A citywide power outage forced the organizers to pull the plug. I shrugged it off, packed my things, and hit the road. No reason to waste a hotel room when my own bed was just a few hours away. Besides, I figured Savannah would be happy. We hadn't spent much quality time together lately, not really. She'd started this late-night fitness program a few weeks back and was out more often than not. I told myself it was normal. New year, new goals. The house was quiet when I got home. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that hums in your ears, makes you feel like you're interrupting something. I called out her name once. Nothing. Her car wasn't in the driveway, so I figured she was still at work or maybe already at the gym. I tossed my suitcase in the hallway, loosened my tie, and headed toward the kitchen to grab a drink. That's when I noticed it, the soft blue glow from the dining room. Savannah's laptop was open on the table. The screen was still bright, like someone had just stepped away. I wouldn't have looked if it hadn't been for that. I swear I wasn't snooping. I just glanced. It was instinct. What I saw in that brief moment was enough to knock the wind out of me. A chat window was open. I didn't catch all of it, just the last few lines before the screen dimmed and went to sleep. But it was enough. We can't talk here. Not with him around. The trust hits this week. We'll be fine. Just remember the room is booked. There was an image too. Attached like an afterthought, but somehow louder than the words themselves. 2 champagne glasses on a marble countertop. A hotel room in the background, luxurious, modern. And a hand, male, tan, and too familiar, gently resting on Savannah's wrist. Her nails were unmistakable. French tipped, exactly how she wore them every month without fail. I stood there frozen. My mind was trying to make sense of it all, coming up with excuses faster than I could shut them down. Maybe it was old? Maybe someone else's? Maybe? But no. I knew better. I knew what I saw. Still, I didn't react. I didn't shout. Didn't slam the laptop shut or rip cords out of the wall. I just closed it quietly. Like I was putting away something too dangerous to touch any longer. When she got home that evening, she walked in like nothing had changed. Keys jingling in her hand, purse slung over one shoulder. She looked calm. Effortlessly so. The kind of calm you have to rehearse in the mirror. "Hey babe," she said, setting her things down. "You're home early." "Yeah. Conference got canceled." "Power outage." She smiled, kissed me on the cheek. "That's kind of lucky, isn't it? More time for us. More time for us." I almost laughed. We made dinner together. Stir fry, her idea. We talked about the news, about her work, about how my boss never seems to age. It was all surface-level chatter, the kind of conversation that feels like background noise in your own life. Then I mentioned the laptop. "Oh, that," she said, barely blinking. Jenna was over. She needed to finish some project for her firm. Used my laptop while I was in the shower. Probably left something open. Jenna. Her coworker. The one with the new puppy and a thing for oat milk lattes. I tried to picture her writing those messages, booking hotel rooms, clinking champagne glasses with strange men. It didn't fit. Not even close. Still, I nodded. Played along. "That makes sense," I said, keeping my voice even. But she wasn't done. That's when she turned it around. Shifted the ground under my feet before I even realized what she was doing. "I mean, not that it's a big deal," she said, suddenly more serious. "But if you're going through my laptop, we should probably talk about boundaries." I blinked. "What?" Privacy matters, Grayson. Even in a marriage. Especially in a marriage. You know that." It was subtle. Just sharp enough to sting. Like a paper cut on a day you already feel worn out. "I wasn't going through it," I said. "It was open. I just..." She smiled gently. "It's okay. I'm not mad. Just, maybe next time ask." And that was it. The conversation moved on. We finished dinner, watched a rerun of some cooking show, and went to bed. But something had already changed inside me. She looked me dead in the eyes and dismissed what I saw. Repackaged it as a misunderstanding, a moment of curiosity on my part rather than betrayal on hers. And for a second, I almost believed her. But that image, the hand on her wrist, the messages about the trust, the hotel room, it kept flashing in my mind like an alarm I couldn't shut off. I didn't confront her. Not yet. But the seed was planted. Trust, once cracked, doesn't shatter all at once. It fractures slowly, quietly, until one day you wake up and realize the whole thing has collapsed under your feet. That night, I lay next to her in bed, listening to the sound of her breathing. It was steady, soft, untroubled, like someone who had nothing to hide. I stared at the ceiling and wondered if that calm came from confidence or practice. If she'd told this lie before. And if so, how many times had I believed her without even knowing I was being lied to? I didn't sleep much after that night. Savannah lay beside me, curled in the same position she always favored, on her side, hands under her chin like a child. I used to find it endearing how peaceful she looked in sleep, but now it just felt eerie. Like watching someone play a role they've rehearsed to perfection. By morning, I was already second-guessing myself. That moment on the laptop screen, the messages, the photo, they felt surreal, like a bad dream you wake from and try to dismiss. But the pit in my stomach wouldn't leave. It sat there like a warning sign I could no longer ignore. And once I started pulling at the thread, the whole thing began to unravel. It started in my office. I had gone in under the pretense of catching up on emails, but instead, I found myself staring at the bookshelf, unfocused. My mind replayed scenes I'd buried over the past year. Little moments brushed off at the time. Dismissed. Minimized. The first memory hit like a jab to the ribs. About 6 months ago, Savannah joined a new fitness studio, a boutique place downtown, specializing in high-intensity interval training and late-night sessions. I remember being happy for her. She said it made her feel alive again, like she had energy she hadn't felt since her 20s. The classes ran until 10 p.m., sometimes later. I joked about how I couldn't keep up. She laughed, kissed me on the forehead, and called me her homebody hero. But now I remembered something else. How she always came back freshly showered, hair damp, makeup reapplied. How her gym bag never smelled like sweat. How her phone never rang while she was there. Because it was always on silent. I glanced at the drawer to my left, the one where I'd tossed that receipt a few months back. I pulled it out, flipping through old papers until I found it. There it was. A jewelry store downtown. A silver bracelet, custom engraved. Who's it for? I had asked at the time. She smiled, not even blinking. My sister's birthday. She loves dainty stuff. It had made sense. Her sister Amber was into minimalist jewelry. But a month later, Amber and I ended up at the same brunch. She'd mentioned her birthday in passing, laughing about how she got a plant and a candle from friends. No bracelet. Back then, I didn't connect the dots. It just didn't occur to me that Savannah could lie so easily. So convincingly. But now? Now I saw everything differently. Another memory, every Friday, Savannah took the car. Said she needed it for errands, which usually translated to gym, groceries, and some me time. She always came back late, after 9 p.m., smelling of perfume I didn't recognize. It wasn't her usual scent. Not the vanilla rose she kept in the bathroom. This one was sharper, more expensive. When I asked about it, she said it was a free tester from her gym. A few weeks ago, she had left the house in yoga pants and a hoodie, messy bun, no makeup. Quick cardio and a smoothie, she said. She came back in a business suit. Hair straightened. Heels. When I asked, she paused for just a beat before saying she'd swung by a last-minute meeting with a client. The firm's trying to promote me, she added. Had to look the part. I remember nodding, even complimenting her. She looked incredible that day. But I should have known. Savannah never mixed gym and business. She hated feeling rushed. That was her rule. And then there were the phones. At some point, she'd started carrying two. Her excuse? One's for work stuff, one's personal. Company policy. But I never saw her check the second one. It was always buried at the bottom of her purse or charging in the guest room. I asked to borrow it once, mine had died and I needed to call the pharmacy. She froze. Use mine, she said. I don't know the passcode. It synced to my email and locked by the office. That should have set off alarms. But I laughed it off. I was always laughing things off. I opened my laptop and pulled up our shared calendar, the one we used to track trips, family events, finances. Her entries had become cryptic. Meeting, appointment, training with no other details. I scrolled back 6 months and saw it clearly now. Every Friday for the past 23 weeks was marked the same way, consult. And in my head, the pieces finally aligned. Noah Lamb. That name. That smug, forgettable face. Financial consultant. Savannah had introduced him casually at a firm holiday event. He's helping me rework my retirement portfolio, she'd said, brushing it off like it was nothing. I remember shaking his hand. Soft grip. Watch too big for his wrist. She laughed a little too hard at his jokes. I remember that too. At the time, I thought I was being paranoid. I told myself I was lucky to have a wife who was driven, social, a little flirtatious. That wasn't a crime. But now even the way she said his name, Noah, echoed in my ears like an accusation. I closed the calendar and leaned back in my chair. My eyes landed on a framed photo on the wall, one of the few left from our anniversary trip to Banff. We were standing in front of a frozen lake, bundled in scarves, cheeks pink from the cold. She looked genuinely happy. Or maybe she was just good at pretending. My gaze drifted down to her signature at the bottom of a birthday card on my desk. She'd written, "Love you forever, no matter what." That was 6 weeks ago. No matter what. I chuckled bitterly. That phrase had once meant security, warmth. Now it felt like a warning label. That night, I didn't bring up any of it. We ate dinner like normal, a chicken curry from a meal kit, cheap Pinot Noir from the grocery store. Savannah talked about her coworkers. I nodded, smiled, contributed just enough to seem engaged. She kissed me goodnight, rolled over, and fell asleep in less than 5 minutes. I stared at the ceiling again. Different night, same silence. But this time, my mind wasn't racing. It was organizing. The puzzle pieces had started forming a picture. Not a complete one, not yet, but clear enough to know the truth was hiding in plain sight. She wasn't just distant. She was somewhere else entirely. And now I needed to find out exactly where. It's strange how quickly suspicion can evolve into resolve. The moment you cross from "maybe I'm imagining things" to "I need to know," you're already in a different world. You stop being a husband and start being an investigator. And once that switch flips, you can't go back. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, not my brother, not my best friend Greg, not even my therapist. Especially not my therapist. She would have asked the right questions and I wasn't ready to answer them yet. I wasn't ready to admit out loud that the woman I'd built a life with might be living a second life behind my back. It started small, harmless even. I downloaded a keylogger onto Savannah's laptop. Nothing fancy. I didn't need to monitor her entire digital world. Just her patterns. Her searches. Her logins. The software worked quietly, buried under the system tray. Every keystroke. Every password. Every file opened. By the end of the first week, I had everything. She was using a separate cloud account under a different name, Clara Stevens. I remember sitting at my desk, hands trembling slightly as I typed the username and password into the login field. It opened without hesitation. The interface was clean, well-organized, with folders labeled by dates, cities, and obscure initials. One of them was labeled simply NL. Noah Lamb. The name hit me like a punch. Even seeing it in that neutral, digital context made my pulse spike. I clicked. Inside, the contents were damning. There were PDF receipts, hotel bookings across Seattle, Portland, San Francisco. Expense reports for luxury condos and beachside rentals, all paid through prepaid debit cards and anonymous wire transfers. There were *TS of email exchanges between Clara and Noah planning business retreats and strategy sessions. But none of the content sounded professional. Most started with phrases like "can't stop thinking about yesterday" or "your wrist still smells like jasmine." Wrist. The hand from the photo. And then there were the videos. One by one, I watched them with the sound off. Surveillance clips, hotel lobbies, parking garages, elevators. Each timestamped. Each showing Savannah, Clara, walking beside Noah. Arm in arm. Lips brushing his ear. Her smile wide and private. The kind of smile I hadn't seen in months. In one video, he handed her a room key. In another, she handed him a wrapped gift, a bracelet I recognized from the receipt I'd found months earlier. There was even a scan of a handwritten letter. I zoomed in, half hoping it was a forgery, a misunderstanding. But I recognized the slant of her cursive, the tiny loop she made on her lowercase e's. "Noah, I don't want to keep hiding, but it's too soon. If Grayson senses anything, we lose everything. The house, the money. The trust matures in March, we just need to hold out a little longer. Then we're free." My stomach turned. It wasn't just infidelity. It was strategy. I sat back in my chair, stunned by the clarity of it all. There was no more guessing, no more speculation. This wasn't some emotional lapse or midlife crisis. This was a planned dismantling of our life together. And she had a name for it. Clara Stevens. Her second self. I should have felt rage. I expected it. But what came was something colder. Cleaner. Calculation. I copied the entire directory onto an encrypted flash drive. Then onto a password-protected external hard drive I kept in my office. I didn't rush. I made backups of backups. If this was going to court, if this was going to become a war, I wasn't going in with just suspicion. I was going in with proof. I deleted nothing. I closed everything the way she had left it. Every window, every folder, every tab. I cleared the recent files list, wiped the browser history. When I was done, it looked untouched. But I was done pretending. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I told Savannah I had a migraine and needed to rest in the guest room. She nodded sympathetically, offered me a glass of water, and kissed my forehead. "I love you," she said. I didn't say it back. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I wasn't sick, not in the traditional sense. But my life had turned into something unrecognizable, and I needed space to think, to plan. I started with logistics. First, financials. I reviewed every joint account we had, checking, savings, credit lines. I documented everything, downloaded statements, flagged irregularities. I pulled up the paperwork from the trust one had inherited from my aunt, tucked away in a legacy account she'd set up before she passed. It had always been legally mine, even though Savannah and I talked about using it someday for retirement or investment properties. Not anymore. Second, legal. I researched divorce attorneys with backgrounds in high asset separation. I needed someone who wasn't just good, they had to be bulletproof. I scheduled consultations under the guise of a financial restructuring inquiry. No red flags, no suspicions. Third, background. I hired a private investigator, not because I needed more evidence, but because I wanted to know who Noah Lamb really was. If he had a history, I needed it. If he'd done this before, it would change everything. The PI's report came back faster than expected. 3 closed cases, all involving women, all ending in financial settlements that disproportionately favored the men involved. No criminal charges, no official red marks, just whispered reputations and quiet relocations. But the pattern was undeniable, and now Savannah Clara was caught in it. That evening, she came home late. "I got drinks with co-workers," she said, slipping off her heels. "Didn't want to bother you while you were resting." She smelled like the sharper perfume again. I looked at her differently now. Not with anger, not even with heartbreak. Just clarity, like seeing a magic trick from the other side of the curtain. "Oh, no bother," I said. "Glad you had fun." She smiled, relieved by my calm. She thought I was still in the dark, still docile, still her pawn. But the game had changed. The next day, I bought a new journal. Not digital, not searchable, just pen and paper. I started logging everything. Her comings and goings, her stories, her outfits, her mood. I took photos of receipts, **TS of texts, notes on her tone. I logged it all in precise detail, because now every move mattered. Every detail was evidence, and I was building a case she couldn't talk her way out of. There's a moment in chess, usually late in the game, when you realize you're not playing to win anymore. You're playing to survive. But if you're smart, if you're patient, you find a way to flip the board. That was where I stood now, and I was ready to flip the board. First thing the next morning, I called my firm and requested a leave of absence. I didn't give a reason beyond personal, and to their credit, they didn't press. I had seniority, a clean record, and enough vacation days banked to cover me for a while. They told me to take the time I needed. I didn't need rest. I needed room to move. With Savannah gone for the day, off to one of her consults, I started locking down our accounts. Quietly, methodically. The checking account we used for bills? I rerouted all automatic payments to a new account in my name only. The joint savings? I froze it temporarily, claiming potential fraud. It raised no alarm, just standard protocol. Next, I changed every password I had, email, banking, even the garage door code. I updated security questions, installed 2-factor authentication, and ordered a new phone with a private number linked to an alias account. Savannah didn't notice a thing. But the most important move came when I contacted my aunt's estate attorney. The trust. Originally, it had been set up to mature over time, quarterly disbursements tied to a joint retirement plan Savannah and I had structured years ago. But it was mine by blood, and the terms had enough flexibility to allow a restructure so long as a material risk to principal was identified. Infidelity counted. I transferred the trust into a legacy lockbox, essentially sealing the funds in a legal instrument she couldn't touch, even in a divorce. My name remained on it. Hers was gone. That night, Savannah came home buzzing about a client dinner in Bellevue. "Long night," she said, kissing me lightly. "We talked expansion, market movement, real estate. You'd have loved it." I watched her face. Not a flicker, not a crack in the armor. "Sounds like fun," I said. She smiled, poured herself a glass of wine, and scrolled through her phone, thumbs gliding over the screen like nothing in the world could touch her. I watched, silent, patient. The next day, I met with my attorney, Audra Lynn. Audra was a fortress in a navy suit. No nonsense. Precise. She took one look at the files I handed her. The videos, the messages, the receipts, and said, "We're not just filing for divorce. We're filing for fraud." She drafted a petition outlining 3 key charges: marital fraud, financial misconduct, and premeditated deception tied to inheritance exposure. Each claim came with substantiating evidence, detailed in numbered exhibits. It was cleaner than I expected. Stronger, too. We were ready to move. While Audra prepared the formal filing, I kept playing my part. I smiled over dinner. I laughed at her stories. I massaged her shoulders when she claimed stress from project deadlines. She never suspected a thing. But every night I logged details in my journal. She borrowed the car again on Friday. Gone for 5 hours. Said she stopped at the spa. I called the spa, no record of her appointment. Saturday, she claimed she had a migraine and needed to lie down after breakfast. But I found her work phone in the guest room, still unlocked, and caught the tail end of a message thread before it auto-deleted. Something about the waterfront property and finalizing signatures under Clara's name. Property. I flagged it, handed it to Audra. Within a day, we uncovered a shell company registered under a P.O. box in Tacoma. Clara Stevens listed as primary trustee. And guess who funded the down payment? Me. My name wasn't even on the deed. Just my money. That was the final nail. Audra fast-tracked the filing. Meanwhile, I started the practical cleanup. I removed Savannah from our insurance policies. I redirected mail to a private box. I pulled my name off her car's co-title and notified the DMV of intent to separate assets. One step at a time, I erased her from the logistics of my life. And through it all, Savannah kept playing her role. She made smoothies in the morning, texted me memes during the day, even left a sticky note on my laptop that said, "Love you more than espresso." The gall of it, the performance. But it didn't faze me anymore. I had the truth. She had a mask. The only thing left was timing. I waited until the end of the month. Friday evening. We just finished dinner. Something she claimed she threw together between meetings. The table was cleared, the dishwasher humming. She was upstairs in the shower. I stepped outside, called Audra, and gave her the green light. Serve her. The documents would arrive Monday morning. Savannah wouldn't see it coming. That weekend, we went about life as if nothing had changed. Saturday morning, farmer's market. Sunday afternoon, walk around Green Lake. She held my hand, and I let her, because by Monday everything would change. Savannah was served on a Monday morning. I remember the exact time, 9:47 a.m. I'd watched from my car, parked across the street under the guise of needing to run errands. The process server, a calm, nondescript man in a navy jacket, handed her the envelope on our doorstep. She accepted it with a practiced smile, like someone receiving a package, then glanced at the sender's information and froze. I could see the transformation from 30 feet away. Her expression shifted from curious to confused, then to something I hadn't seen before, pure, naked panic. She stood there for a full minute, motionless, clutching the envelope like it might bite. Then, just as fast, she pivoted on her heels and slammed the door shut. I didn't go inside. Not right away. I drove around the block a few times, let the adrenaline cool before facing what came next. By the time I returned, Savannah was sitting at the kitchen island, the envelope torn open beside her, the pages spread out like debris from an explosion. Her face was pale, lips pressed into a line so thin they nearly disappeared. Her eyes met mine, not with anger or defiance, but disbelief. "You're divorcing me?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer. I simply walked past her, set my keys on the counter, and poured myself a glass of water. The silence between us was enormous. Grayson, she said, her voice rising, what is this? Fraud? Deception? Are you serious? Still, I said nothing. She stood, her voice sharpening. This is a mistake. A misunderstanding. We can talk about this. I looked at her then. Not the version I had known or thought I had. Not the one who smiled across restaurant tables or fell asleep on my shoulder during movies. No, this was someone else. Someone cornered. I know everything, I said simply. She froze. Clara Stevens. The hotels. The trust. The Shell property. The videos. The messages. All of it. The silence returned deeper than before. I've retained legal counsel, I continued. And the filings are complete. You're entitled to respond, but the evidence is conclusive. She looked down, swallowing hard. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, you went through my things? After you used our marriage to finance your affair? I said, yeah, I did. She turned away, walked to the sink, and gripped the edge of the counter. You don't understand, I understand exactly. There was nothing left to say. That week passed in a haze of legal calls, logistics, and ice-cold civility. Savannah moved into the guest room, claiming she needed space to breathe. I gave her all the air she wanted. The court date came faster than I expected. Audra said it was because the case was airtight. The judge agreed to an expedited review based on fraud allegations and documentation integrity. When we entered the courtroom, Savannah still held herself together. Hairstyled, makeup flawless, clothes sharp. Beside her sat her attorney, someone I'd never seen before, younger than I expected, trying hard to look unshaken. Audra was stone-faced, professional, calm. She laid out our case with surgical precision. Timeline, financials, evidence, intent. Then came the exhibits. Every image, every recording, every piece of correspondence tied to Clara Stevens. Hotel bookings, receipts, footage, emails. I watched Savannah's composure unravel in stages. First the shift in her posture, then the fidgeting fingers, then the widening eyes as her attorney whispered something sharp into her ear. Her defense centered on entitlement. Her lawyer argued that the inheritance, though held in a trust, had become functionally marital due to lifestyle integration and long-term expectations. They pushed hard on shared benefit, community property, and spousal contribution. But they had no answer to the fraud. No explanation for the shell company. No rebuttal for the screensh *TS surveillance or the forged financial signatures tied to property documents in the name of Clara. When the judge asked Savannah directly if she had used an alias to open investment accounts and coordinate private real estate contracts without my consent, she hesitated. Then she lied. No, Your Honor. That must be a mistake. Audra stood. We have handwriting verification, 2 recorded identity confirmations, and the original application form, signed and timestamped. The judge reviewed the documents in silence. I see, he said finally. Let the record show that the defendant has been provided sufficient evidence to confirm willful misrepresentation of identity. That's when Savannah's voice cracked. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. But it had. And the court didn't deal in intent. It dealt in proof. The ruling came later that afternoon. The inheritance trust was deemed non-marital and protected. The shell accounts were flagged for investigation. Savannah's access to our financial ecosystem was immediately terminated. She was denied any claim to the estate, the trust, or any future earnings tied to it. Additionally, the court approved a motion for damages, both emotional and financial, based on documented fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. Noah Lamb's name came up during the proceedings, listed in relation to the property scheme. The judge issued a referral to the State Board of Financial Advisors to review his conduct. While not criminally charged, his involvement as a known third-party beneficiary of fraudulent activity opened the door for professional sanctions. Savannah didn't cry in court. She didn't argue or shout or collapse. She just sat there, numb, as her life unspooled in reverse. And I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just sat in my chair, calm, still, remembering that moment months ago when she said I was invading her privacy. This wasn't revenge. It was justice. When the session ended, Savannah walked past me without looking up. Her lawyer muttered something about options, but her expression was vacant. She knew what she'd lost. Not just the money, not just the lifestyle, but the carefully constructed illusion she'd built to mask it all. She left the courthouse alone. And I didn't follow. 6 months passed. By then, the divorce was finalized, Savannah had vanished from my day-to-day life, and the dust had settled. Sort of. I hadn't heard much about her, just whispers from mutual friends about her consulting work and a brief attempt to restart her career under her old name. I let it go. She had already lost everything she thought she could control. Then came the San Francisco conference. It was a last-minute invitation from a colleague, something I almost turned down. But I figured it was time to re-enter the world again. Something low stakes. A chance to just be Grayson again, not Grayson, recently divorced, burned by scandal. The keynote speaker on day 2 was introduced as Clara Stevens. I nearly choked on my coffee. When she walked out onto the stage, I froze. There she was, Savannah, wearing a blazer and confidence-like armor, speaking under her alias, lecturing on women's financial independence and resilience after toxic marriages. The room clapped. I didn't. I recorded the entire thing. She spoke with conviction, twisting her own lies into cautionary tales. She portrayed herself as a survivor of manipulation. Every anecdote, every emotional pause, it was all theater. But worse, she cited fabricated statistics and even referenced a legal system that punishes women for taking initiative. I didn't make a scene. I didn't confront her. Instead, I sent the footage, along with court documents and a summary of her case, to her sponsor and the conference board. Within days, she was pulled from future events. A formal investigation followed. Her attempt at reinvention crumbled before it even began. She wanted to rewrite the narrative. I just reminded everyone of the facts. After the conference, something shifted in me. I realized I didn't just want to move on, I wanted to build something from the rubble. I'd spent my career in numbers, in margins and audits. But now I saw a need beyond spreadsheets. I founded Trust Sentinel, a nonprofit built to help victims of financial and relational fraud, especially in domestic situations where betrayal wasn't just emotional, but calculative. I used part of my inheritance, now secured and out of Savannah's reach, to seed the fund. We offered legal guidance, forensic accounting, and emotional support. In the first year, we helped dozens. By the second, we were nationwide. At a local fundraiser, I met Lena. She ran a veteran care initiative, soft-spoken but driven. We didn't talk about our pasts. Not at first. But she asked the right questions, and when I told her the story, not the scandal, but the growth, she didn't flinch. She just nodded. We grew slowly. Carefully. This time, everything was built on transparency. Savannah tried to dismantle my life. But instead, she gave me a new purpose and the clarity to choose something better.